Well, hey guys, welcome back to Blackboard Biology. So I hope you watched the introductory video for the channel, What is Science? And now we're going to dive in with this next one. And especially if you're my Scott High students, this will be the first kind of unit we do. And we're going to look at ecology. And for this first video, I just want to kind of answer the question, what is ecology? And kind of dive into some of the specifics of that and why we should study it. That's a big thing. I want to know why. I want to know why should I care about this idea of ecology. And so if you look at this word art that I've got here for us, here's some things that may pop into your head when you think of ecology. You know, the earth, things that are green. Ecosystems is a big one people often think of. Climate, habitat, think of nutrients, all of these things. But as we're going to see here in a moment, ecology is so much deeper than just that. So let's just dive right in. The word ecology, as we use it today, right, this ecology is actually derived from a Greek word. The root of it is from this Greek word oikos. Now that, I have no idea if I'm even pronouncing that correctly, but it basically means houses. So it gives this idea of houses or levels of organization. And that's what we're studying in ecology. We're studying organisms within these quote-unquote houses, these levels of organization, and their interactions with each other and the environment. And so we have our smallest house or level of organization at the individual level, just one organism. Then, you know, the same species of organisms all put together in one area at one time. That's a population. All the populations in an area is a community, which makes up an ecosystem when you figure in the abiotic factors. We'll talk about that in a moment. We have biomes, and we have finally the largest, the entire biosphere, the whole portion of the earth that supports life. So what I want to do with the rest of the video is, again, we'll talk about kind of why we should study ecology, why it's important, but I want to dive into these levels of organization just a little bit. So let me clear all the screen here. And let's talk about an individual first. Well, an individual is exactly what it sounds like. It's one organism. One organism. And that organism could be any species. It doesn't matter. It just depends on what we happen to be studying. Well, why does that matter to you? Well, if you're that one organism, I would hope things matter to you. But not only that, one individual may be of particular importance to an ecosystem, or it may be of particular importance to a population. And so we're concerned with organisms from time to time. But often we study things probably more so at the population level. And so a population is a group of individuals, but they have to be the same species, and they have to be in the same location. And so that's time and place, which may sound a little odd that you have to designate that, but think about it for a moment. This elk population represented right here. Well, what if we were talking about elk that lived there 50 years ago and elk that lives there in the present? Well, those two aren't technically concurrently part of the same population. Now, we could talk about them in terms of population change over that time, but if they're not in the same place and at the same time, they're not really technically part of the same population. Well, moving on, when you look at an area, you're not likely to see just one population. You're likely to see many populations interacting with one another. So here we have a moose who's representative of his population, and here we have what appears to be a mountain lion or something. I can't really tell. It's kind of small, and a rabbit, right, and an owl. All of these are representative of their collective populations in this diagram. So when you have a lot of different populations in the same area, we refer to that as an ecological or biological community. Now that's a little different than your community. When we talk about your community, we're just simply talking about only the humans. So really when we talk about your community, that's more of a population in ecology terms. But all of these populations together is a community. So all the populations in the same place and time. And that makes up an ecological community. Now, that word community may be a little bit different concept than what you're more familiar with. If you've heard anything about ecology before, you're probably more accustomed to hearing about ecosystems. Well, an ecosystem is a little bit different than a community, but they're very, very similar. An ecosystem is actually the community plus all of its surroundings. Or as a fancy way of saying that in science class would be abiotic factors. So that is the difference in an ecosystem and a community. The community is only pertaining to the populations, but the physical environment is in view when we talk about an ecosystem. So this ecosystem is all of these populations plus the atmosphere, plus the water, plus the dirt, all of the things that are non-living or abiotic. Okay, and so that's the difference in a community and an ecosystem. Now, oftentimes people get a little bit confused between ecosystem and what we call a biome. And the reason for that is, well, they're kind of similar, but the biome is the larger one. And so a biome is actually a collection of many ecosystems. It is a similar climate and similar types of organisms. So, you know, it's kind of more of a ecosystem is kind of more, we're talking about one particular location, a specific ecosystem. When it comes to biome, we're kind of talking more of a general sense of what might we find in a typical ecosystem within this particular biome. So it's a collection of ecosystems. With similar climate, okay, so weather patterns over time, they have a similar climate, and organisms. So, you know, the specific ecosystems within a biome are going to have similar organisms within them. But again, ecosystem, think more specific. Biome, think more general. What would we find in an area that is similar to this? And last, of course, we have the whole biosphere. That is all portions of the earth that support life. All right, and that literally means all of it. It could be parts of the atmosphere. It could be down under the ground. It could be in the oceans. It could be in the forests. Wherever life happens to exist, that is part of the biosphere. And so all of these things, you may be thinking, well, that's kind of cool, but how does that really affect me where I live? Well, generally, you probably like to eat. And so that food has to come from somewhere. And generally, you like to have fuel in your vehicle to be able to drive around and go places. And that fuel has to come from somewhere. And generally, you like to have water to shower and to cook with and to drink. And that water has to come from somewhere. And so ecology and learning to study it and learning to use these ideas and these methods to our advantage to make things much more sustainable for future generations and for ourselves, that's a pretty worthwhile cause. And that is why we need to study ecology and make our best efforts to preserve and take care of this planet that we've been blessed with. And so I just want to thank you for tuning in. Again, this was Blackboard Biology. Thank you for tuning in and studying what ecology is. And in the next video, we'll jump into kind of more of the specifics of population ecology. As always, I want to thank you for watching and encourage you to subscribe and check out my other videos. Have a great day.